How is it possible that a video game publisher, in particular one single game which that publisher operates, how is it possible for that publisher to have $1 trillion hack? Because believe it or not, that's actually not an exaggeration. The company is Ubisoft, the game is Rainbow Six Siege, and today we're talking about a damaging yet somewhat hilarious series of events which led to the game being temporarily shut down, with trillions of dollars of in-game currency and items being dispersed all across the player base. Let's start with background. December 19th of 2025, right before the holidays, a new vulnerability was discovered inside a service called MongoDB. For anyone who isn't aware, MongoDB is a very popular open source database serving many of the world's largest companies. We're talking about banks, insurance, AI, news, auto companies, even Google, pretty much anything you can possibly think of. Immediately after the disclosure, this new vulnerability received a name, CVE 2025-14847. But given its similarity to an existing exploit known as Heartbleed, CVE 2014-0160, which affected the open SSL library at the time back in the day, given the strong similarities, CVE 2025-14847 was rapidly dubbed MongoBleed. Within a few days, an exploit was published on GitHub. I find it very funny, personally, to see the little disclaimer at the bottom saying, quote, "This tool is for authorized security testing only. Unauthorized access to computer systems is illegal," end quote, when the entire purpose of the exploit is to gain access to unauthorized information. But regardless, on December 19th, the vulnerability appears, and by December 26th, there's a working public exploit. We don't know how many companies or general services were impacted by all this. Some may still be impacted over time. It's an extremely high severity ongoing exploit. Likewise, we don't actually know if the successful hack of Rainbow Six Siege even had anything to do with the exploit. But the timing certainly lines up, and over the course of the rest of the video, as we unravel the tangled narrative, it should become a little bit more clear why MongoBleed is such a pivotal centerpiece, even if it's not the actual culprit. In the most rudimentary terms possible, please do feel free to correct me down below in the comment section if anything is wrong. The most simplistic explanation of how MongoBleed works is this. First, an attacker tricks the server into thinking that a particular incoming message, when it gets uncompressed, would be much larger than it actually is. Typically, this wouldn't matter. In most modern programming languages, memory just gets zeroed out in a situation like that. But in this case, because of the mismatch in size, the server basically stuffs everything it had in memory into the faulty message. Honestly, that's not precisely what happens at all, as per my understanding, but it's the best way to describe things in a simple format. Once the memory has been wrongfully stuffed into the initial message, the attacker needs to get the message back, and this is where they go through a complicated series of steps, essentially creating a forced error, after which the server, attempting to be helpful, sends the message back to them, with an explanation of where the error occurred. Again, it's not quite that simple, but I'm not even remotely qualified to do a detailed summary, so it is what it is. Ultimately, attackers can then execute this process thousands of times per second, and basically just scan the entire database. This is an incredibly dangerous exploit. It's an 8.7 out of 10, by the way, on the severity scale, and theoretically it could be impacting hundreds of major companies at the moment. But for right now, today, I'm focusing on Ubisoft, and more specifically, Rainbow Six Siege. A little bit of housekeeping before we go further. A lot of this information, the majority of it actually, comes from an account called VX Underground, which curates the largest collection of malware samples on the entire internet. They also go by Smelly Smellington sometimes, and they like pictures of cats a lot. I did attempt to have an interview with them, offered up a picture of a cat myself, but no dice. However, they've been remarkably open with their explanations of what happened after allegedly speaking with various representatives from not one, not two, three, four, but 5 separate groups, hacker groups, who were directly or indirectly involved with the exploit of Ubisoft and Rainbow Six Siege. If you want to follow their account, there's a link down below, obviously, but the timeline goes a little something like this. Around December 27th, Ubisoft gets compromised. An initial group of attackers gain access and begin dispersing millions upon millions worth of in-game credits to the entire player base. Not just credits, by the way, some players reportedly received exclusive developer skins, special items, and all sorts of other content being dispersed to accounts, as well as unexpected bans and even trolling by visualizing song lyrics through the feed of account bans. It's actually kind of funny when you think about it. All in all, it was a rather severe disruption to the service, to which Ubisoft responded by downplaying the entire situation. They referred to it as an incident or an issue, but whether or not they were willing to admit how bad things really were, they were forced to take the entire game down for almost 2 straight days. In total, something like $300 trillion worth of credits and other items were handed out all across the community, and Ubisoft was forced to clarify that no one would be banned or suspended for spending those credits, but that the entire game would have to be rolled back to try and undo the damage. That was attacker group number 1, the Chaos Agents. Group number 2 is where it gets even more interesting because supposedly, utilizing MongoBleed, a second group at the time managed to gain access to Ubisoft servers, exfiltrating source code for all of their games. The claim was that they had code for every Ubisoft product as far back as the 1990s, and fresh off the heels of an 8.7 level severity exploit such as MongoBleed, it wasn't exactly hard to believe. Except there's more. Suddenly there was a group number 3, this time claiming that they had compromised Ubisoft, exfiltrated user data, a lot of it, and were then using that data to supposedly extort the company. Once again, it's not exactly hard to believe, because it's not even the first time that's happened. Back in 2020, Ubisoft was hit by something called egregor ransomware, which ended up releasing over 500 gigs of source code for Watch Dogs Legion, which is ironically a game that's all about hacking. And something similar happened again in 2022, this time with a group called Lapsus. It's really not far-fetched at all to think that Ubisoft, which does in fact use MongoDB across most of their services, would have potentially been hit again, multiple times, in the wake of this current exploit. However, as plausible as the situation seemed, reality is never really so simple. Contradicting groups 2 and 3, a fourth group entered the picture, this time claiming that the previous two groups were lying. The source code from all the way back to 1990, while probably existing in some capacity, had been stolen a while ago. Apparently there was internal fighting amongst the attackers, some of them attempting to hide behind each other and take advantage of the whole situation. But going even further, after several days of uncertainty, a fifth group allegedly appeared. This fifth and final group, supposedly the most serious of them all by far, broke down the process for VX Underground, demonstrating what happened, how it happened, and clarifying who was and was not lying. Group 1, the initial hack, that is, and the ones who dispersed all the currency, were real. Obviously it happened, the game was offline for days because of it, but Group 2 was lying about how they gained access. Group 3 was just full of shit entirely, and then Group 5 was like the dad that came home and all the kids were arguing. Apparently these groups loosely know each other. They operate in the same Discord server at least, and if the reporting is accurate, they plan to release a detailed public write-up of what happened and how, but at the moment, there's, I guess, conflict. MongoBleed created a massive opportunity and a free-for-all inside Ubisoft, but the resulting chaos isn't just because of the exploit, it's also because of the people involved. Different hacker groups with different intentions and different motives all smashed together during the holiday season, creating chaos in Rainbow Six Siege and Ubisoft. But even as I make this video, funnily enough, even as I was scripting the parts about how Siege had been taken offline for days and all that, it happened again. As of right now, January 5th, 2025, Rainbow Six servers are down again. Apparently bans are being handed out left and right for 67 days, which is apparently a meme. 6-7 is somehow an internet joke, I guess. Not entirely sure why. But streamers and various other players are being given 67-day harassment bans, indicating that, once again, attackers have gained access to privileged information and are wreaking havoc inside a Ubisoft product. As it stands, what we know versus what is claimed are two entirely separate things. The MongoBleed exploit may not have been even used in these hacks, and yet whatever issue Ubisoft was grappling with, creating a feeding frenzy at the expense of their public reputation, clearly isn't finished yet. Oddly enough, they haven't said a single thing publicly, Ubisoft that is, on social media since December 29th, after which the game went down again very quickly, leaving the entire player base to wonder, how bad is it really? What's actually going on? MongoBleed is an interesting exploit to me. Not exactly because of what it does, in this case, more so because of what it caused. Even if it wasn't the utilized mechanism, even if it's just a name that was, used as cover by some of these groups, MongoBleed coincided with an extremely chaotic and high-profile gaming hack, then causing multiple other groups to step forward, claiming to have sensitive information, attempting extortion, and throwing tons of gasoline on the fire in a very plausible way. I, for one, will be absolutely waiting for the supposed clarification from the fifth group of hackers who are, I guess, the most serious ones, but I'm not exactly holding my breath because whoever these loosely associated groups are that obviously know each other, they're clearly not all on the same page about what to do or how, and the impact that they're having on the game is ongoing and substantial. Ultimately, it's a $1 trillion hack in terms of raw value. Multi-$100 trillion apparently, if you factor in the value of skins and items and everything distributed. But the practical impact, or like the real dollar impact, I suppose, is more like millions. Maybe hundreds of millions if the damage to the infrastructure of Ubisoft's most valuable product is severe. The game itself, Rainbow Six Siege, has earned Ubisoft billions since it first came out. But the final chapter of the story remains to be seen, with a multitude of different ways it might play out. I think the whole thing is kind of hilarious. But until then, that's it. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below, a special VPN deal, locals and Patreon, channel memberships, and more. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, question everything, and have a nice night.